Welcome to E3 Alliance's Road to Recovery webinar, a priority playbook for your school. This is our fourth installment of this series, and in our first three webinars, we shared the playbook with examples. Today, we are mixing it up a bit and are delighted to have three school leaders with us to share their work aligned to the priority playbook. Before getting started, I want to let you all know that we will be providing the slides, recording, and roadmap to all participants in the webinar follow-up. As well, the link to all of these resources has been added to the chat. And if you have not done so already, please add your first name, role, and location to the chat so we can create a Road to Recovery community of learners. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature. We will have time at the end of our webinar to answer questions, and we'll try to get different panelists to answer different questions. And as well, please engage with our social media platforms, tweet or post by tagging @E3 Alliance. Thank you to our sponsor, the Lola Wright Foundation, for supporting the Road to Recovery series and resources for educators. I, Matt Pope, will moderate our conversation today. I am a proud member of the team at E3 Alliance, a nonprofit in Austin, Texas, whose mission is to transform education systems through data and collaboration so all students succeed. Also, we have my teammates, Leticia Maynard and Lori Davis, who will be our webinar facilitators by engaging with you in the chat and sharing resources. School leaders are doing the essential work to ensure our schools are open, safe, and are providing the best quality learning experiences to their students. As a former school leader, I know all too well how critical their work is to ensure the success of our school systems. I'm honored to moderate today's webinar with our amazing panelists. Today we have Linda Garcia, Assistant Principal at Kyle Elementary School in Hayes CISD. We have Robert Truehill, Principal of Elgin Intermediate and Elgin ISD. And Lacey Ajibola, Principal of Dessau Middle School in Pflugerville ISD. They will each share their work related to a topic from the playbook, and at the end of the webinar, we'll have time to answer questions, so it's important to use the Q&A feature. Thanks again to our panelists who have taken time out of their busy schedules. They actually all just finished dismissals to share their work from this fall with us today. We will start with an overview of the priority playbook. We will then spotlight each leader with a different category from the playbook. Today's webinar will spotlight We're in This Together, focused on student attendance, A Place to Belong, which is focused on school culture, and Close the Gap to ensure effective and equitable instruction. We will also provide you a roadmap to plan out this work with your team. We know COVID-19 has impacted all parts of our lives, but more specifically, it has challenged everything we think about schooling and learning. The playbook is a tool to help guide your school towards recovery and transformation by providing you a structure for planning, help you focus on what is most important, and support you with how to get this work done. But before we dig into the playbook, I want you to review the chart on the screen. We were in the crisis stage with emergency remote learning starting in March until the end of the last school year. We are now in the transition phase, specifically at re-entry and moving towards recovery. We've already seen in the last month building closures due to COVID-19 positive increases. We might not see true recovery until a vaccine is fully realized and distributed. But as we move towards recovery and transformation, we must use the lessons we learn to innovate and improve on how we do schooling forever. We can make schools reflect our new world and create a new normal with what is possible. So let's learn about the priority playbook. The playbook can support you wherever you are in the journey towards transformation. First, Leading Forward is focused on strong leadership that will guide the transformation. Leading Forward is the pathway which runs through all parts of this playbook. Next, we ensure a safe place where our staff, students, and families are healthy and secure throughout the year. Then we send a message that we are in this together by ensuring students and staff are attending and engaging in our community, no matter the modality. Once we have them attending, we can then focus on continually reigniting our school culture to make sure everyone feels like they belong. And finally, we close the gap for all learners by providing them with equitable, high quality instruction. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. As well, this marathon course throws many obstacles every day, but we must look forward and think about how we can overcome, transform, and succeed. Let's jump into our first spotlight category. We will start with We're in this together and focus on student attendance. Here's our playbook for We're in this together. It includes a checklist of actions to improve attendance on your campus, including leading with an attendance team, reviewing data, and developing different passive intervention and communication, and continually providing guidance on when to stay home and using a coverage plan. Our panelist today is going to highlight who makes up their attendance team and how they review data and their intervention paths. The playbook continues with the implementation of systems for these non-traditional environments, including collecting and monitoring multiple types of data, systems for accurately reporting attendance, and clearly outlining roles and responsibilities for all within your plans. Our panelists today will highlight their efforts to collect and monitor multiple types of attendance data. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our first panelist. Linda Garcia is the assistant principal of Kyle Elementary School in Hasty ISD. During this time, I feel it's important on checking in on how people are doing. So before we get started with learning about the work at your school, how are you doing, Linda?
Well, Matt, I'm going to say I'm in survival mode, but I'm motivated to have a survival with a smile kind of attitude. You know, as school leaders, I'm sure that we've encountered some difficulties this school year, and the importance of being positive during a pandemic can definitely play a part in your attitude and also your effectiveness. So I'm finding myself rolling with the punches and trying to do it the best way that I can.
I love it. And thank you again for being here. But I love that you're just keeping that positive outlook, because, you know, we can come to work and come to school every day and see everything that's challenging, or we can see everything that's positive and the potential. So I appreciate that mindset. So Linda, your school is early education through 5th grade. You are doing the hybrid model, meaning you have students in person in the school building and virtual. Can you tell us more about your school?
Yes, so the second 9 weeks, we saw an increase in in-person learners. So right now we're at about 60% in person versus 40% virtually. At the start of the year, we were more at 50-50. So when we were planning our master schedule, we needed to have our teachers prepare for in-person instruction and virtual. We do have some grade levels in which a teacher is solely in person or virtual, but we do have other grade levels in which the hybrid model is being implemented. And so that is something that we're tackling and pressing forward.
Awesome. Thank you for setting some context before we jump into the work. It's good to understand how your school is operating during this time. So thank you for sharing that. So now let's discuss how you and your team are supporting student attendance. Attendance has historically been managed by an assistant principal and an attendance clerk. And for everyone else, it's just that announcement and a box checked at 10 a.m. But things have changed and your leaders have responded. So tell us how.
So guys, I have to share with you that last year, our campus established our KES attendance team because we found merit in having a collaborative effort. It couldn't just fall solely on the attendance clerk or an administrator because you were able to do more with a group of people working together. And so one of the things that carried over was this team, but also establishing a weekly meeting. And so with Fidelity at 2 o'clock, we come together as a team to discuss our campus attendance practices. We also review any tier 2 interventions that might have been implemented recently. We also take some time to discuss any of our families that are of concern. And so it's been an opportunity for us to come together and discuss it weekly and determine what our next steps are going to be.
Thank you for sharing that. And I love that one of the things that y'all have made sacred is this meeting. So it's not something that gets pushed, for other pressing issues or calendar events, but this is something that y'all have held to, and it's important, right? When you make time for it, that means it's important and that it is part of the work of this team and everyone else on your team.
Exactly. It brings it to the forefront. I think sometimes, those of us that live by our calendar, if it's a set appointment, it makes you make it be aware of what's going on in that topic, but also holds you accountable of what you're going to be presenting at the next week's meeting in regards to the follow-up.
Yeah, I totally agree. It should be a standing item, but it also should be a representative team so that you have different perspective and you have shared leadership in this work. So tell us about your campus systems to measure attendance at Kyle Elementary School.
So Matt, I have to be honest with everybody in attendance and share that the topic of attendance was definitely something that caused confusion for our teachers. They were accustomed to hearing the bell, getting on their system, and documenting if students were there or not. But this year we had to restructure that, and virtual learning is making us have teachers provide input to our attendance clerk about participation, about whether they're participating in synchronous learning or asynchronous learning. And so when you have different expectations for teachers, you result in having to focus on the fundamentals. And so as a campus, we went back from the beginning, ensuring our teachers that they were communicating with our parents, but the importance of documenting this communication, because this is a tier 1 attendance intervention. And so we utilize Eduphoria for our tier 1 documentation form. And so it gives them an opportunity to also build background. We're finding that our attendance clerk had to restructure her position because, in the past, it was logging into our system, taking account and then looking at the kids who are absent. However, with asynchronous learning, kids have an opportunity to count for attendance by turning in assignments via email, participating in Zoom. And so our attendance clerk has to have continuous communication with our teachers. And so we're finding that that has been essential this year, just making sure that that communication is taking place and the documentation as well. And so I do have our Google Sheet, a screenshot of our Google Sheet that has been our reference for this documentation. And so as you can see here, this is our daily attendance worksheet. And so our Schoology report is the foundation for the Google Sheet. And then our attendance clerk utilizes it to document the correspondence that's taking place with our teachers. I want to let you know that right now, our attendance clerk has been managing this, and our attendance team has been having access, but we do aspire for this tool to be something that we transition to our teachers in the second semester. I'm going to be very honest, their vital role in this Google Sheet plays an important part, and we want them to have ownership. We postponed them taking on this responsibility until a later time because the start of this new school year, as all of you know, was a very interesting one. And Schoology is all I'm going to say. And so, but now that we are in the thick of virtual learning and our teachers have a grasp of what to do with these other responsibilities, we want to give them an opportunity to take this on because it'll help our campus not only document virtual attendance, but it can serve as a reflection tool for them because level of student engagement is what our attendance clerk is keeping up with in this Google Sheet. And so if teachers have an opportunity to have access to it and maintain it, it'll give them an opportunity to see as a whole in their class, this level of engagement. And it'll also give our attendance clerk a chance to participate more in our tier 2 attendance interventions, because right now it's falling on the administrators, our counselor, our district intervention specialist. And so we want her to come and join our team in that aspect.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And remember, like we said at the beginning, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So this kind of chunking of the work and the responsibilities is appropriate because you want to support your teachers to do it well. Because it's not gonna, if it's just done as a checklist every day, it's not actually going to improve actually getting students to attend and engage at the high rates that you want. So I appreciate that kind of chunk support that you've done for your teachers in this process, in this new system, in this new world we're in, right? So you have data collection. Now, what are you using the data collected to support students? How are you using it?
So when a student's pattern of attendance warrants the KES attendance team's attention, they refer the student via our Google form, because one of the powerful things about a Google form is it generates responses into a Google sheet. And so our team monitors this sheet and then assigns submissions to a member of the team. We then go back to our tier 1 documentation and Eduphoria to build our background. And then we decide as a team sometimes that the tier 2 intervention is going to be, or sometimes that team member initiates something on their own. It gives us also a chance to look at it holistically as a campus, our students that are being referred who might need additional attention, and also gives us an opportunity to let our district attendance interventionist be familiar of anybody who might need a tier 3 intervention. Matt, I want to go ahead and share with everybody our form. Awesome. So as you can see with our Google form, you're able to see that it logs our teacher submissions. It has their notes, and then we're able to then add our notes and still maintaining the form active and live. And so it just aligns in identifying the needs that we have for our students. And so one of the things that our campus has focused on is the importance of ensuring that our parents are informed of their impact in their child's attendance. Because one of the things that we have encountered at the elementary level is they are relying on their caregivers to get to school on time, to make sure that they log in. And so we want to be sure that our parents are understanding that when they're not participating, it impacts their ability to keep up with what's being maintained in the classroom. You know, asynchronous learning, for some parents, they feel like there's flexibility with that, and they're structuring their child's learning opportunities around their schedule. But we want to make sure that these parents understand that sometimes that inhibits their level of engagement and instructional activities. So parent communication has been the avenue that our campus team has decided to focus on to positively impact our attendance.
I appreciate that. So like one of your tier 1 supports now is just communicating what is all of these new terms, what are the expectations, what is your role in all of that. But then when students aren't successful at tier 1, your team meets based off of this referral and provides an individual plan for that student. So you're really digging into this at your weekly meeting with the team to really make a plan that works for that kid versus just a cookie cutter, this is what we do in every situation. So can you tell us more about that type of situation?
Well, what we're finding ourselves needing to do more often is home visits. That, you know, it's been a common practice when it comes to supporting and monitoring attendance. However, we do have some families that, you know, they're getting a hold of them has been more difficult. And so we do take, of course, precautionary measures when we go on these home visits. But one of the most powerful things that we've encountered this year is meeting them where they're at. You know, coming to their environment gives you an understanding of what they're dealing with. And so I recalled earlier this semester that there was a family in which they were struggling with the technology. You know, they didn't reach out because talking over the phone and troubleshooting is not it's not everybody's norm. And so it was so powerful going there and, you know, showing them how to manage the app, but also realizing that as a campus, you know, this child did not have the appropriate technology for a 4th grade. You know, she was on an iPad. And so we worked together and figured out a way of getting her a Chromebook. And so there's just so much power in that. In these kind of interventions definitely give you perspective and give you an opportunity to address further needs, you know, as the year goes by.
I love it. Well, thank you, Linda, for the amazing work that you and your team are doing. We appreciate you being here today, and keep it up, keep it going. And I'm excited to see what happens in the spring semester with your campus.
Well, thank you, Matt. It's a work in progress, but we're very motivated to continue to be effective and push forward.
Awesome. Thank you. So our next category, A Place to Belong, is all about reigniting school culture. A place to belong reminds us to keep connections before content. School leaders must ensure proactive and deliberate alignment with their mission, vision, shared values, and collective commitments to inspire teachers, staff, and students, earning their trust and building strong, positive relationships. Our next panelist will highlight deliberative, proactive alignment with the school's culture content. Relationships are strengthened and enriched with opportunities for shared fun and habits of connections that build a sense of identity. If we want students to show up, participate, and authentically engage, we know they have to feel like they belong. And we are excited to welcome our panelist, who is literally, along with a great team, building a place where everyone belongs in Elgin, Texas. So our next panelist, Robert Truhill, better known as Bobby Joe, he is the proud principal of Elgin Intermediate School in Elgin, Texas. How are you doing, Bobby Joe?
Hi, Matt. Hi, everybody. I'm doing great. It's wonderful to be back. It was nice to have a nice Thanksgiving break, but it's great to be back in the swing of things here at school, and honored to share some of the great things that we're doing here at the Intermediate.
Well, we're glad you're here. So your school is a 5th and 6th grade campus, and you're also doing the hybrid model where students are in person and virtual. Can you tell us a little bit more about your school?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it. We're our first year here as an intermediate campus in Elgin ISD. We serve all 5th and 6th grade students in Elgin ISD. We've got an enrollment of about 659 students, and we do have about 55% of our population has chosen in-person learning, while the rest of us are learning remotely. We follow an asynchronous instructional model, but it's great having this age group together, and looking forward to the rest of this year as we continue to ignite our legacy here at the Intermediate.
So yeah, thank you for that context. So let's talk about you and your team's work to build a strong culture. Opening a new school. So I'm repeating that. You're opening a new school. So this is a new school during this challenging year of 2020. So it had to be a lot more to ask of you and your team. But yet you've managed to open a school that has a strong cultural foundation and strong habits of connection for students with your house system. So can you share with us how the house system was developed?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Intermediate is modeled after a middle school, or after a secondary campus. So we have 2 pods for each of our grade levels. So 4 total pods here at the school. The ideal situation is that these pods share the same teachers. So if I'm a student in pod 1 and my buddy's in pod 2, we might be in the same grade level, but we don't have the same teachers. And the idea is that when we look at it from an RTI lens, and targeting student needs from an instruction standpoint, we have those conversations together because we all serve the same students. And as we were building this school and creating the staff and looking how we wanted to fill it, the big goals the first year were to have a strong culture and to have strong systems. And so to build a culture from the beginning, we kind of had these pods already set up for us that allowed us to have these houses. The houses are modeled after our core commitments. And so as a guiding coalition, which is our leadership team at the beginning of the year, we involved our entire staff to determine what are the areas and what are the characteristics that we want students to embrace, and then eventually when they leave the Intermediate, to have learned and really practiced. And so as a school community, as a staff, we developed what those 6 terms were, those 6 core values, and then we put those onto our houses. And the idea here is that you're in your pod, that's your team, you share the same teachers, the same kids are in that pod, and so now you have this this group that you can identify with in your house.
Great. So let's take a look at your 4 houses. So can you walk us through this design?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it started off first with what we wanted, our main core commitments for this school. So our staff in June, once our staff was decided on, we sent out letters to them for them to describe or to narrow down 5 to 6 terms that they wanted the Intermediate to represent, because again, there's a foundation here that we get to lay because there's nothing here before us. We settled on igniting our legacy. So our legacy words are resilient, being responsible, showing integrity, being safe, being respectful, and then having empathy. This was important to us because we wanted to make sure that this was what we focused on every single day that we came to school. So then as a leadership team, we narrowed this down from these 6. We determined which were the 4 biggest needs or the 4 biggest areas that we wanted to target. And this became our house names. So we settled on resilience, responsibility, integrity, and respect. But we wanted to have it more than just these terms. So we looked at what represented our population, and we specifically picked languages that were representative of our school community. And so we settled on Ujasiri for resilience, which is Swahili for resilience. We settled on Ansvar for responsibility, which is Swedish for responsibility, and Integridad for integrity, which is Spanish, and then Savasmos for respect. And each of these houses represents one of the pods at the intermediate. And so this aligns perfectly with our legacy terms, because this is what we want to, like I said, we want to embody, and this is how we measure whether or not we're igniting our legacy, by making sure that we're hitting each of these terms every single day with everything that we do.
I love it. So, you know, when schools create sometimes this little guideline or hashtag like legacy becomes a poster, but you've deliberately with your team made it a part of every system, specifically with the pods in the house, by deliberately picking the name and connecting that name to the purpose of that pod. So I think it's great work to really connect all that cultural content to make it more than just a poster on the wall, right?
That's exactly correct. We wanted to make sure that these were the terms, the core commitments that we live by every single day here at the intermediate.
So let's walk through the design of your house system. So can you kind of explain how your campus is built?
Yes. So like I said, we have 2 pods in each grade level. And so House Ujasiri, I'll take Ujasiri for example. That's one of our 5th grade houses. That house, every teacher that's in that house sees the same kids. So the same kids rotate between, are departmentalized and rotate between each of those core content teachers. And the same is modeled in 6th grade. And then these houses reflect back to our legacy terms. And again, these are the types of qualities that we want to make sure that are being instilled in our students every single day.
So then a student's a member of a classroom, that's a member of a house, and then they're a member of the whole campus team. And
yes,
that creates identity and all the different things. So could you walk us through how this layered levels of belonging kind of allows you to build in incentives for your kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So we also have scoreboards that we have that track our progress every day and every week. So students start off in their classroom, and they have a classroom scoreboard that they're working to earn points based on showing those 6 core commitments from legacy. So they're a part of a classroom, and that goes out further into a house, and then that goes out further into a campus. And what's really cool is that the students start to really take on this mentality of that I'm a student in this classroom in House Ujasiri at the intermediate. They've even put it into their emails where it'll have their name, it'll have their classroom, but then it'll have their grade level and their house name on their email signatures. So the idea here is that you're working with your team inside your classroom to earn points that are going to get incentives or rewards for you as a class, but then you're also pulling those together as a house. And so then every week we revisit what goals we've set out for ourselves. And these goals are varying from attendance to discipline to participation. And we measure based on how many points we've accumulated, not just in the classroom, but as a house together. And then we have a house winner overall. But then we have to make sure we have our kids understanding that you're not just part of this classroom and part of this house, you're also part of this campus. So all of our points go together as a campus, and we're working towards campus-wide rewards. And we make sure that we revisit these as much as possible. And when we do it weekly, because we want to make sure that students are remembering what goals we have in front of us, what we're trying to accomplish. And that way we're celebrating those accomplishments in real time and having those rewards for those students as quickly as possible, so they can see that I'm putting all this work in and I'm seeing a result from my work.
I love it. I love that story about that the students are putting their house name and their email signature. I mean, that's a clear indication in our now virtual world that they identify with something, they belong to something, but then you and your team are deliberately making sure that they see how it's connected to the bigger picture of a much bigger campus community. And we're all one, right? We're only as strong as each other. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, what incentives do we do in this new hybrid virtual blended world So can you walk us through some of the incentives that you've done for your campus and some of the structures you have to motivate students and teachers?
Yeah, absolutely. So at our virtual assemblies that we have every week, we set out what our goals are. So we're always trying to hit 98% with our attendance. We're focused on growth. So we're awarding points based on growing. If a student does better from one assessment to the next, they're getting points. The classroom rewards then, this is more on the teachers. The teachers can come up with different ideas, and we have them go on maybe like walks outside, or they'll have some free chat time at the end of an office hour just because they've earned that based on the amount of points that they've accumulated in that classroom. But then we'll have house rewards. And so we had the same type of struggle when we were trying to think about what types of rewards and incentives are we going to have for kids in this virtual environment. So we have these breakout sessions that occur weekly, and they're always the Thursday before the next assembly. So the winning house gets to choose which one of their rewards they want to go to. So they can go, and the kids can go to any one of these breakout sessions, and a member from the leadership team is leading that reward. So an example is I lead categories every week. And so kids will join us and join me in the morning. And it's only for, it doesn't interrupt any instruction. So we start at 8:10. Our instructional day starts at 8:30. And so from 8:10 to 8:30, we have this reward for students to log in. We've got trivia, we've got bingo, and we just play this game together. And just have fun to celebrate that they were the champions. Teachers also get a reward in this as well, and that can vary anywhere from like Sonic drinks to reserved parking, to having maybe like a sweats day because they've earned it. And so that it's really great because when we first talked about this, we wondered, is this really going to be effective? But it's really neat to see the impact that it's had on teachers too. So much so where they're going and they'll put like the color for Integridad is orange. So they'll go and put orange sticky notes all over the other sixth grade house, Sevasnos' house's doors, and they'll write Integridad on everything. And then Sevasnos will do something back to them. And so it's really nice to see this culture being built where the commitment is there, because every week we're looking forward to this Friday where we have this culmination of all of what we worked through and all these goals that we set from the previous week to see if we've met them. And then we have school-wide rewards, and these went from my counselor actually, when we said, well, what are we going to work for? So the first one was a teacher lip sync battle. And we set it at 5,000 points because we weren't sure how quickly these points are going to be earned. Well, they blew to 5,000, blew through 5,000 very quickly. So we had teacher lip sync battle. So each house submitted their own lip sync video for the students to then vote on to see who the winner was. And then the next school-wide reward was, again, bringing all the house points together from our 4 houses. If they reached 20,000 points, they chose to dye my hair, and they chose to dye it pink. And so it was always student choice the whole time. They chose that reward, they chose the color that it was, and then we had a big unveiling at one of our assemblies. And it's talked about frequently, and now we're going into our house crests where students have submitted what their designs for their house crests, and they're voting on those. So that's going to be the big unveil. The big reveal this Friday is what the house crest will be for each house moving forward.
I love it. So it's deliberate incentives at all levels, building towards goals. And you mentioned something important at the beginning. It's based off of growth. So how are we growing based off of those? Because we have an ultimate end goal, but how are we getting there each week, and how do we incentivize based off of that? And your team hasn't let this whole hybrid world with virtual and in-person get in the way of having fun. And that's what you're doing with those different virtual meetups and choices that your kids and staff get to pick from, whether it's the house rewards or the school-wide rewards. So what impact has this had in your short time this fall semester of being this Elgin Intermediate School?
Right. So, and that's always what it comes down to is this working? Is it efficient? Is it effective? And so we've tied different aspects of our school into our house system. So when we first started, it was simply, are we participating? Are we attending? Are we turning assignments in? Then we started to amp it up and start to reward points for attendance. And when we started to do that, all of a sudden the attendance just spiked and it rose tremendously. When we first started the year, attendance, like Ms. Garcia was saying before, was a real challenge. But since then, we haven't had a day that we're below 93% on any grade level. In fact, we're in the high 90s every day. And one day we only had 20 students absent for the entire campus, and that's remote and in person. So it's really nice to see that when we leveraged it towards something that that we could turn into true data and look at, it was working. When we started awarding the points to the teachers for turning in their attendance first or having perfect attendance, teachers started to call our registrar to say, well, who's absent, who hasn't turned anything in, and send me my report to see who I have. And then they started looking through it, and they started making phone calls during their planning period to make sure, hey, turn in your assignments. And it's turned out to be really, really great. And so we celebrate that every week. We're aiming for 98% every single day. And so we tell the students that at our virtual assembly. We also had these house PLCs. So again, going back to the RTI standpoint, where we're all sharing the same student, and all means all, we sat down and we had our teachers fill out engagement surveys for all of our students. And so we got to meet not just as a department, but this time as a house, where every content area in that house met together to discuss every single student and what we needed to do as a team to target their needs and effectively reach them during this time. So it's been really great. And again, you know, the whole growth idea is we embrace that here at the intermediate, and we knew that this year was going to be difficult opening a school, but having COVID on top of that has just compounded the challenge that we've had. So we really try to instill and preach a +1 mindset and embracing our growth every single day, doing something better today than we didn't do better yesterday. And so it's really nice to see where we've gone, and I can't wait to see what's to come for the intermediate.
Yeah, it's outstanding, and kudos to you and your team. I just think, you know, you mentioned from your time with us this afternoon that you and your team set out to create what you believed, what you valued and believed, and created commitments, and then built a structure of your school to align and let those commitments and values flow through not only the staff, but the students. And then you've been incentivizing and creating opportunities for that culture content to just flow through all members of your community. And that has helped. I mean, that culture work has helped you increase attendance, and you're on the road to improving your passing rates and student performance. So culture work actually helps improve attendance work and learning and instruction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that the house system is something that our houses are something that we look forward to every single day, and the kids really, really enjoy to know that they're a part of something, and it's great. I'm really excited for the future.
That's great. Well, thank you, Bobby Joe, for being here and sharing your team's work. And we're excited to see what continues to happen at your campus. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So our next priority play focuses on closing the gap, and we will work to ensure instruction is effective and equitable for all students. This includes strategic adjustments to curriculum, which allows teachers to truly focus on the most essential content using assessments to inform planning and teaching. Remember that implementing evidence-based student-focused practices has always been critical to the work of ensuring effective instruction. This year, that has become even more critical than before because of the new challenges we are facing. Student-focused instructional design that provides frequent collaboration for thinking, speaking, reading, and writing continues to be a target we are all aiming for. And I'm thrilled to spotlight our next leader, who, after being hired in May 2020, jumped in to lead a turnaround of a middle school. She's going to highlight her school's effort to focus on instruction to meet the needs of their students. So I'm honored to have Lacey Ajibola, our final panelist today. She's the proud principal of Dessau Middle School and Pflugerville ISD. How are you doing today, Lacey?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you.
It's great to see you. So your school is 6th through 8th grade. You are doing the hybrid model as well. Can you tell us more about Dessau Middle School?
Yes, so we currently have 795 students enrolled here at Dessau Middle School. About 350 of our students are in person. The remaining students are virtual. 82% of our students are economically disadvantaged, and we have 40% of our students who are English language learners. All of our teachers here, grades 6 through 8, are teaching a hybrid model. They're teaching kids virtually and in person simultaneously at the same time.
Thank you for setting that context. So can you tell us briefly how the journey began for you this summer when you got hired in May 2020, you were actually finishing a principal job in another district, and how you and your team really focus in and reach an instructional focus so quickly to meet the needs of your students?
So you're absolutely right. Coming in was it was challenging work. The first time I met my team was virtually, and coming in, I knew that I had to quickly align with my team to identify some instructional strategies that were going to really move our students forward. I knew it was going to be challenging work coming to Dessau. I knew that the campus was in the process of being a turnaround campus, and I knew that I was coming to further advance that work. And so, one thing that I knew is even before the pandemic, they were at risk, and so I knew the pandemic was going to exasperate, some of those issues. And so coming in, it was really important that I aligned with the team quickly. And we identified instructional strategies from the past that were very effective, and, decided to talk about how we could incorporate those and make sure that we had streamlined those strategies so that we can make sure that our teachers had a very, very specific set of skills to address our students' needs, and also reflective of the data that demonstrated that our students would need.
Thank you. And so your team came up with what you call an instructional playbook. So you focused in on how you're going to move your campus forward with some student-focused strategies and then successfully implement them in this world. So tell us how your team came up with this playbook and talk us through this one specific play of purposeful student talk.
Yes, so coming in, we knew that our teachers were going to have some challenges this year. And so one thing that we didn't want our teachers to have to grapple with were a plethora of instructional strategies. We wanted to make sure that we had some solid instructional strategies that were proven to be effective for our students, both virtual and in person. And so we came together and developed this playbook to focus on 5 really important strategies. One thing that we noticed was purposeful student talk. As we were doing walkthroughs in our classrooms, we noticed that was a huge challenge from the very beginning, because teachers, once they began hybrid teaching, they were kind of tethered to their computers. And so they really could not move around as much. Students were, for the first time, coming back since they had been out of school since spring break. And so they really, were kind of, not talking as much. They really didn't getting used to the hybrid learning. And so that process of student purposeful talk was going to be highly challenged this year. And so we really began to talk about, as an administrative team with our instructional coaches and the PLCs, what kind of strategies can we put in place and what kind of tools can we put in place to encourage student purposeful talk. And so one thing that we focused on was we did a few PDs for our staff to talk about doing stations to pair in-person learners and virtual learners. We also talked about Jamboard, chat sessions, things of that nature, breakout rooms to really encourage students to talk. We also, talked about teacher mobility as well. And so this was really important for us to be able to engage our students because, of course, in person, the remote learners were hard sometimes to engage. And even in-person learners, because, it was definitely different than the traditional classroom. So that was a huge focus of ours this year.
Well, and I love how you bring this up. So you talked about student talk, and you have basically 2 learning modalities happening at the same time. But you and your team didn't say, well, we're just not going to do student talk because it can't work this year, or we have challenges or obstacles, because you just told us you have 40% of your students are English learners. So student talk is critical to their language development and academic achievement. So
Yes.
how have you kind of navigated this environment where you have both modalities happen, but also in the classroom, people have to stay 6 feet apart from each other?
Right. Well, this is very important. So when we realized that this was going to be a challenge for us, we began to talk about ways to basically prepare our teachers to navigate and kind of erase that seam between our in-person learners and our virtual learners. And so one thing that we really did is talked a lot about in PLCs about, engaging both learners. We have some teachers on our campus who are absolutely amazing. They're very tech savvy. And so we developed one system called Tech Buddies. And so the Tech Buddies basically worked with people on their teams just across the campus to make instructional setups that were really conducive to student purposeful talk, making sure that students in person were being able to be engaged. One important instructional arrangement was arranging cameras so that in-person learners could see virtual learners and vice versa. And so that was really important for us. And so as we continue to, to play with things and gadgets and different things, some things were successes, some things were not as successful, but we made sure that we were tolerant and even still working to put in technology solutions and keep each other abreast on what we can do, sharing it in PLCs, talking to other, people about those technology solutions.
Well, yeah, with your set of focused strategies that your team is investing in, it's easier to provide layers of support and differentiated support for your teachers, like you mentioned, the tech buddies, and then the different PD during PLCs and other opportunities, because you're only focused on those few things that you want your teachers to do really well for your students.
Absolutely.
So tell us about when people struggled. You kind of already mentioned this, but what have you done? How have you supported them in the remote and in-person students?
You're absolutely right. That's been an ongoing challenge, and we're still working that out. But one thing that we notice is teachers wanted to be able to walk around, because sometimes when they're behind the computers, to make sure that they're not neglecting their virtual learners, they can't get up and walk around and be in the power zone, as we're often, which is a look for when we do our walkthroughs. And so we noticed that, how can we equip teachers to be more mobile? So we piloted a little something called our rolling carts. In the picture you see Talisa Hester, who is a resource teacher here at Dessau Middle School. And this is her laptop card. And so when she flexes it up, she can actually see the learners. She can roll around and talk to her different students. And so one thing that she was particularly excited about is not having to be tethered to her computer, being able to move around, and also being able to encourage the socialization in her classroom. So that was very, very important. Things like Jamboard, chat sessions have also been used for students, breakout rooms, and it encourages students to engage and talk. I actually have a daughter who attends Dessau Middle School, and I remember her, making comments about, how socially it wasn't engaging, but as we have been, the year has been progressing, she's been talking about the excitement of breakout rooms, chatting with other students. And so that's how we know we're doing what we need to do here at Dessau, because students are being able to engage more with one another.
Yeah, so in this virtual world, student talk may look different, right? It's not necessarily
Absolutely.
like you and I are talking right now. It could be through chat or through written responses.
Yes.
And y'all figured out there was an issue there. So you addressed it through needing to address writing, right? And how do you get students to write more critically? So how have you addressed these kind of challenges with talk to collaboration through writing?
Yes, and so you're absolutely right. Talking has a new norm for sure for students. And so one thing that we have is we have an advisory for our student. Every student in the school has an advisory period. And so the teams are absolutely wonderful. One thing that I've noticed with the teams is they identify the needs of the students very quickly. With our English language learners, they identify their need to be able to communicate with other students, with their peers, and also writing, like you said, was an issue. So I love the fact that the sixth grade team said our sixth graders have no keyboarding skills. They can't type, and a large part of their communication is being able to type. And so we looked at a variety of free software before we invested in before we actually take the step to invest in a keyboarding software, but they actually work on keyboarding during their advisory to be able to respond to things faster, communicate in chats with teachers faster, and communicate with each other. We also do journaling. Several teachers do prompts. When kids enter the classroom, they have a prompt which they write in the composition notebook. So this is also encouraging writing skills among the students that's interest-based. And also community building circle. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, once again, it was student talk was important to your team. You put on your playbook and you built in all these systems to address challenges to make sure student talk or collaboration is still just as important and critical, no matter what challenges you may face today or tomorrow, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, one thing too, Matt, was part of that talk too, was kind of doing what you did at the beginning of the session, checking in to see how kids are. There's a lot going on, and a lot of our students are facing challenges with the pandemic. So being able to check in with kids in the morning was really important. So the community building circles was really good for our L's. All of these strategies are really good for our L's because it gives them the chance to practice that reading, listening, and writing, those reading, listening, and writing skills. And so the community building was huge. Some teachers have really done a great job of bringing kids in the morning and getting those conversations going early in the morning, engaging where kids are encouraging that socialization as well.
That's great. I love the whole SEL aspect as part of your instructional focus, because at the end of the day, they're humans, right? And they're experiencing it just as we're experiencing these incredible times. But thank you for sharing your campus's work and your efforts to not only recover during these challenging times, but to turn around a school as a brand new principal at this school So thank you to you and your team for the amazing work you've done so far. We're excited to see where you go the rest of the year.
Thank you so much, Matt.
So now that we've shared the spotlight stories, I'm going to share with you the Priority Playbook Roadmap tool to help you make a plan for your school. On the Road to Recovery resource page, you can find this Priority Playbook Roadmap. The roadmap is a tool to help you and your team organize and make concrete plans for how you want your campus to look in the spring. In the roadmap, you will find tabs to think through each priority with examples of what the work might look like. The last tab in the roadmap will help you prioritize your ideas and plan for implementation. So that tool is a great tool that you can download and use with your team to really think about what areas you may want to improve on, what strategies the panelists today have shared with us that you might want to plan for implementation. So we have a little bit of time. I'm going to pull up and look at a few questions that we have in the Q&A. And so I'm going to ask this of all the panelists, whoever wants to answer. So one of the questions we've received, and we've received quite a bit in our work, is how do you manage all this stuff? So how do you manage the time to be in PLC meetings, visit virtual and in-person classrooms, deal with and react with everything that happens? So how do you manage all that? Bobby Joe, do you want to jump in?
Sure. I think still figuring it out every day, because if this year has taught us anything, it's to be flexible and adaptable. But for me, I think it's making sure that we prioritize and we make what's important to us, we make that a priority to us. And so and trying to do as much as we can when we can, but it's really difficult to do all of it at the same time. So that's how I rationalize it in my head and move forward, every single day.
Well, yeah, you only have 24 hours in a day, and you don't want to overwhelm your team and your students. So, investing in a few things and making them what you focus on and you spend your time and your resources on helps you really advance that work, when in reality, in normal times, we can't do everything well. In our current circumstances, we can't do everything well as well. And we have more challenges that we're facing. So I appreciate that. So that is our time today. Before we wrap up, we would love your feedback to get input on what you would like to learn more about on future Road to Recovery webinars. So please visit menti.com and enter the code 221653. The link to the survey has also been added to the chat. We appreciate you completing this for us to give us some input and feedback for future Road to Recovery webinars. So please use the playbook and the roadmap to help you on the road to recovery and transformation. Share the tools on the resource page with other campus and district leaders. We know this work is hard and everyone is struggling to keep up with the news and the latest guidance while adapting everything schools do. That is why it's important to build partnerships with organizations, and we can be that partner for you. So contact us using the email solutions@e3alliance.org and ask about a coaching session with our team to help you with your needs and using the Priority Playbook. As well, we will have another Road to Recovery webinar on Thursday, February 25th at 4 p.m., where we will do a status check where schools have started the spring semester and how to learn and modify to adapt these plans using the playbook based off of the realities during that time to really navigate the end of the school year and end it strong. So the registration has been added to the chat, and we will also send it out via email. Thanks again to our panelists, Linda, Bobby Joe, and Lacey, for your leadership and commitment to your schools. Thanks to our sponsor, the Lola Wright Foundation, and thank you for attending today. We are grateful you decided to spend an hour with us today and hope these leader stories will help you, and we look forward to collaborating with you on the road to recovery.